I had the opportunity to meet him at around 2.5 years ago, and he was doing something amazing in the computational design for forefront, integrating technology and building plugins. And throughout the last 2 years, I saw him doing like very cutting edge stuff in the field, and I thought it would be great to have him on the show. So, first of all, thanks a lot for your time.
Thanks. Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah. So, Praneet, if we take a step back and if we can share what were the pivotal points that led you from architecture to a technologist.
Um, since I started studying architecture, I kind of was exposed to a lot of AEC tools early on. I started working with SketchUp back in school. So by the time I started studying architecture, I realized there are a lot more tools out there than just SketchUp. And uh, as I started discovering more, I kind of came across tools like Rhino, Grasshopper, and that's how I got more into programming. And yeah, it sort of sparked a journey that by the time I graduated from architecture school, I just wasn't interested in mainstream architecture at all, and shifted entirely to working in technology.
Got it. And after the college, what how does a day in your life look like currently? And I know you started your own consultancy, so how has that journey so far?
Yeah, after briefly working at a few companies doing various innovation type jobs, I kind of ended up working by myself as a consultant at first, freelancing for a few companies and working on a few projects. But then eventually we started first ARPM in India and now Iterate in Germany uh, to sort of broaden our horizons and be able to do a bit more than just what one person is capable of. Uh, and yeah, it's been going good. Been working on a lot of projects now.
Yeah, and I remember you have some very interesting panel discussions, come podcast on ARPM show, like,
Yeah,
and you interviewed some amazing people in the industry. So if you're watching, also definitely check out.
yeah, we briefly did try doing that. Uh, there were a few podcasts that we did with a lot of talented people. Uh, Unfortunately, we weren't able to keep it up for very long, but there are a few episodes.
Yeah. So moving on to like the core crux of like the discussion, I saw the update from you about the event driven programming and how you took inspiration about other game engines work and developed your own platform. So first, if you can share what was the inspiration and the need behind that initiative and what were the challenges?
Sure. Um, As far as inspiration goes, a huge chunk of inspiration was from Grasshopper, of course, uh, and also from the fact that Grasshopper 2 was announced, and it kind of had a lot of limitations from a upgrades perspective. Like we were expecting an upgrade, and we kind of got a side grade with Grasshopper 2. So the that kind of disappointed me a bit, and it also led me to it kind of motivated me to scratch the itch that I've had always with Grasshopper, which is that it doesn't have event-driven programming, which is kind of what Unreal Engine's blueprints have and kind of allow. With Grasshopper, we're always kind of left working with timers, and it's kind of not always. Uh, it's always a hack to work with any kind of events. And the button is actually just a true false toggle. So yeah, all that kind of really drove me to at least explore what this was about. And so I decided to first maybe write a paper, and uh, in order to write that paper, I had to first do some studies, figure out what what impact it has, and you know, when I dove into trying to make event-driven programming work in Grasshopper, I realized there are a lot more limitations to it. Uh, you know, software-wise, especially like foundationally. Uh, so I set out to build uh, an alternative platform for doing a similar kind of uh, any kind of visual programming, uh, without the context of Rhino, without uh, any kind of limitations in terms of the uh, context in the ecosystem, rather. So what I ended up building was basically it's called verse 3 because it's kind of the third time we're trying to build something like this. But yeah, it's kind of a visual scripting environment where you can make simple low-level scripts. It also has interoperability capabilities with Rhino already, but we're working on one more with Unity now. Uh, and we're slowly building the toolkit, but yeah, it's taking a while. Um, since we're not a lot of developers and we're not like we're all architects or not professionally trained developers, it takes a while to sort of get started with things and develop.
Yeah, I can only imagine how much time and challenging it is to build something like this from scratch. But if I were to ask, uh, what is the difference between the way when we say event-driven programming, and just so that we know how Grasshopper works? Is it like, yeah, and what are the various options out there?
Right. Yeah, that's a frequent question that I've heard. Often people don't understand how functional programming is different from event-driven programming. But there's a very good analogy to kind of clear it up. We've all worked with Excel and PowerPoint. Right? In Excel, you have formulas in every single cell, and in PowerPoint, you have transitions and animations. So they're completely different things, but they're both kind of ways of programming, if you think of it. With formulae in Excel, you can do what's basically functional programming. You can say you can sort of give a cell certain inputs and expect an output from it, which is what you can do in Grasshopper as well. Every single component has inputs and you get an output. But in PowerPoint, with transitions and animations, you can do a bit more. You can say that when the mouse is clicked, then do this. Right? That's event-driven programming. When this event occurs, then animate that. So that's not something you can do in Grasshopper or in Excel for that matter. And just that capability provably makes PowerPoint already Turing complete. So you can make a Turing machine inside of PowerPoint with just using transitions and animation. Sorry, still recovering. But yeah, that's basically the difference between functional and event-driven programming. Another way to look at it is you can't really say turn that light bulb on without having an understanding of actions and events, right, or triggers and events,
Hmm.
because you need to uh, pass something once. You can't have a data stream saying that okay, this bulb is on. So if you don't want a data stream and you want to trigger actions, you have to have the capability to send events. And uh, it's difficult to develop data flows, and it's not as difficult to develop event flows, which is why it's a little bit of a shock why Grasshopper doesn't already have it. Uh, but again, Grasshopper was built with a very different perspective and a very different problem statement, so to speak. I mean, Rhino was a jewelry design software after all. So yeah, that's basically why event-driven programming is important.
Yeah, that's a great analogy. And I was thinking like in in web development, when we have like, okay, you click on buttons, that's another like trigger for, and then you can attach events based on that clicker. So ultimately, like the way comparing performance, like the engine checks whether are we checking like change in data or change in trigger every tick, and that's how like performance of both apps differ. Or
Not exactly. It's not uh, the entire concept of events is a little different from what we're used to when we work with data. Uh, Events in C sharp basically are uh, they work in a subscriber listener type of fashion.
hmm,
So you have to create event handlers, and in code it's a bit more complicated to work with events. It takes a bit of getting used to, but when they're visualized like this, if you've used Unreal Engine's blueprints,
yeah,
I'm sure you can relate to how simpler it becomes to kind of grasp the concept of events and also work with them intuitively. Um, so yeah, in the background, they don't exactly work the way data does. They work more like a, a feed and a subscriber, right? So
hmm,
the subscriber keeps listening for uh, something to come from the feed, and as soon as something does come, it acts. The subscriber could not have any feeds that it's subscribed to, and the feed could not have any subscribers and still fire and listen for events. Uh, but then when you actually connect them and you say, okay, add this feed to these subscribers or the other way around, that's when they actually start working. And, yeah. So it's data is kind of a subset of events. So you can attach arguments to data to events, and that those arguments can contain data. So it can work that way.
got it, yeah, yeah. In I've seen like for visual programming, like there are open source libraries like Node-RED. To start with, like if you can walk us through what were the options you had, and yeah.
Right. I mean, for development, I kind of course, started by studying what existing options are there, and there are a few, especially the more popular ones. Many of them do have event-driven programming. Node-RED is there. There's Touch Designer. There's Unity's Bolt, the visual scripting. Now it's even integrated into Unity, and of course, there's Unreal Engine's blueprints. And these are all the only the ones that are event-driven environments. And apart from that, there's I mean, even Houdini, there's Blender nodes, even Dynamo. But all of these that I've named, and even a few more, they all come with a certain set of limitations because of the environment that they're built for, because of the context that they're built for. Like Unity's and Unreal Engines tools only work inside of those engines. You have to have an application that's working with those engines. Uh, the same goes for Touch Designer. Node-RED is just built for a completely different purpose, which is IoT. Um, you have Houdini, Grasshopper, and Dynamo as well, which are again restricted to their kind of environments. There's hardly any example of a visual scripting tool that's built for low-level programming without like general context agnostic programming. Um, to actually build productivity kind of help anyone build simple applications. I mean, how many times have you felt like I wish I had this inbuilt feature inside of Windows that would let me rename multiple files all at once, organize my file system, or just set up meetings or the simpler stuff, which then you have to look for microservices and purchase plugins and kind of look for solutions for it. So the goal was basically to empower people with a simpler way to do programming. uh, at a lower level and agnostic of what environment they want to work with.
Hmm. Great. Uh, you had one like a image like when on your LinkedIn post like showing the components you have built. If you can share and
Yeah.
tell a bit how each component were developed.
So I had a lot of help from my co-founder Ashwin. Uh, he basically learned C sharp while developing all of these plugins.
Oh,
Uh, and what you can see here already, this script is just a simple. Uh, it's a countdown timer of sorts. Right? You have one timer that's ticking every second and refreshing this component which outputs the current date and time uh, at every tick. And then I'm just subtracting that from whatever date I want to count down from. Right? And it outputs all of these individually as well and shows me the date time. Right? So the way these work, it's highly reminiscent of Grasshopper as well. It's an infinite canvas with these components that can sort of be placed and moved around. Uh, the GUI is a little disappointing, I'm aware. That's because we haven't really worked at all on any kind of graphic design. Everything is just the default that comes with Windows. But yeah, we've tried and developed a large enough toolkit that it's actually usable for anyone even to test. So we of course have the classic number sliders, and I mean it's not yet possible to change the extents of this, but we're still working on the UI elements and stuff. But yeah, it's highly reminiscent of Grasshopper, like I said,
mhm.
and it works pretty much the exact same way, where you kind of just connect nodes to make things work. So the primary difference, however, is the fact that you can uh, work with events. So that's kind of display that. We can work with a button and set some arguments. Try a for loop. Um, so yeah, what I'm trying to set up now is basically just a simple for loop where I can add a certain number to my to kind of count up, um, sort of like a arithmetic progression, basically. Um, um, yeah, another issue with the GUI right now is that because they're all text, you have to actually read through them to find what you're looking for.
And like event argument can be any like data format, like date like text, image, float.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah.
It can be a number, it can be a boolean, it can be literally anything. Let me just remove this. Yeah, I think there's a bug. um, which tends to happen.
Mhm.
But yeah, I can maybe display some other kind of
There are a lot of
features.
components, I must say, like
Yeah, there is
Nodal.
quite a lot. which is why there are a lot of bugs as well. um, yeah, maybe the timer. I could actually show a simple debounce function that I think works pretty well. So a debounce function, in those who've worked with JavaScript will know what debounce means, but it's basically um, when you have a varying input that changes very quickly, like a slider that's visible to a user and they want to play around with it this way. It's often difficult to send the value to a server and then get it back very quickly to the user without having a lag, and that causes issues when you're working a lot with UI. So we can, since we can work with events here, we can actually create a very simple debounce function just by adding a delay to when we uh, actually pass the number on. Right? So we can just say every time the value is changed, it'll kind of pass it on to this component, and then we can uh, check whether or not the data has actually changed, and or actually rather we can just, in order to demonstrate this, I can just set a 1 second timer and check whether the data coming is the same as what the current value is. So I have another here, and I'll check the equality for these two. And if this is true, then I want to actually pass the value on. Uh, so I'll create an if then statement. Yeah, so it's only setting, it's only true when I leave it for about a second.
Mhm.
Right? So now I can just add another wait timer here. So it'll then wait for another second, and if the value is, if it's still equal, then it will pass the value on. Right, so it is true,
Mhm.
and so it's passed on. So simple debounce function with not much, you know, not much happening, just an equal to check um, in a few components.
That's awesome. I was wondering, like, what do you think would be use cases in like computational design or architecture workflows? Any
Um,
thoughts?
yeah, in architecture workflows, we often end up working with loops and stuff like that, and the solution that we work with right now for recursion and any kind of repetitive activity, they're all mostly hacks because the tools that we work with are all, Grasshopper, Dynamo, especially in AEC. They're all based on some kind of modeling software. Um, and we rarely work with Unity or Unreal. That's mostly for visualization. So when we're working with loops, we don't have as much control with the visual and the solutions that we have, the hacks, basically, Animal and uh, the other Hoop Snake. They're kind of, plugins that are built to work a certain way, and you can't really do much else. Like if I were to create a bounce function inside of Grasshopper, it would probably be quite difficult. It would take a while for me to, maybe I need a Python script or something, a timer, and somewhere I have to. Uh, it involves a lot of non intuitive thinking. Whereas this, it's a little more straightforward. I understand there's still a lot more to do still with, especially with regards to the UI and stuff like that. But I mean, the logic of it makes a lot more sense because it's made more visual. and you don't have to get into working with different UI of timers and all. And that's, I mean, one advantage. The other is, of course, it enables a lot more flexibility with automation, because you have the ability to also work with other applications. So there's, you can send and receive messages from uh, applications outside of this one, without it running inside of them, or being plugins or something like that. This kind of enables you to work with events from other applications. So I can say, when I maybe get a message from a server, that a customer has placed an order, let's say, then 3D print this uh,
Hmm.
you know 3D model with these parameters. And I mean, that's not a direct AEC application, but that could mean, easier automation of building services, simple uh, IoT applications that can be easily scaled to work, and scaled and customized in real time as well. Uh, to adapt to building's performance. Maybe you want to change certain parameters to adjust for maybe climate changes or any kind of conditional changes. You can script your building to work a certain way in real time. Your HVAC, or so many systems in a building can be automated and made smarter using simple IoT automations.
Yeah, that's one of the thing I was thinking. Like I know in IoT, like there's like MQTT, which has like pub sub model, and they have like real time. Okay, if they send like there's a data stream from multiple sensors, and if you want, if there is a listener in this application, we can also make graphs of okay, what is it like time series of HVAC sensors and stuff like that.
Exactly. Yeah. I'm a little scared to test out Interop right now. To be honest,
No, it's fine.
I feel like it'll also have a bug, uh, but I can give it a shot. I believe it should work.
But
The
does it
issue
like
is,
communicate through WebSocket or like
no, it
what's
is not. It communicates locally through what's known as named pipes.
uh,
So it's basically a Windows specific low level technology, which allows applications to communicate with one another. So I basically just have a simple Rhino plugin, which lets me initialize a server, a local server, so to speak.
mhm,
Right? It is one server running here and one here.
mm.
Um, and I can essentially just send a message over. Yeah, there's a bug. Yeah, there's definitely a bug. Yeah, but yeah, conceptually it does work. There's actually an issue with the uh, data structure, which is causing these problems in the loop and the interrupt. We recently updated it, so it's kind of broken a few plugins. And again, these are all plugins. Um, the foundational kind of code is ready, and we're kind of just working on building plugins and toolkits that work on top of this. Even the vanilla Grasshopper components are all basically plugins that are shipped with
Mm.
the application. So these are also basically vanilla verse 3 plugins, but we're slowly building them, and it's taking a while. Uh,
Yeah.
there's
How,
also the ability to, yeah.
no, go ahead. Yeah.
There's also the ability to extend the application from within it. Like there's an IDE which is also supposed to work, but is not currently working, unfortunately. But yeah, I'm sure you can see posts on LinkedIn that I've done in the past. There's basically a way to just script your own components in real time and initialize them and test them here without having to move to Visual Studio or VS Code or something like that. Similar to how Grasshopper's C Sharp scripting environment is. And you can also preview the console when that happens. In fact, you can view the console of the entire application. If there's any error, it does tell you. So again, data type issues are what cause these bugs.
That's super cool. I was about to ask like for the interoperability, like the setup was very fast and simple compared to like other ways of setting server and like doing interoperability. So mm, kudos to the way you architected it.
Thanks. I made a post where I've actually shown a third application also that kind of works. It's just a Windows Forms application that you can uh, run, and it kind of allows you to communicate uh, with Rhino and that third application via Verse3. So because it can communicate with multiple applications at the same time, it kind of works as a hub as well. So what we're hoping for is that we can sort of connect Rhino and Unity eventually in real time and kind of have my Rhino model being reviewed inside of Unity, maybe even in AR in real time, and that kind of uh, makes this very intuitive and simple to use pipeline for any kind of 3D modeling and stuff like that.
Mm. What's the file format you saved this?
The script,
Yeah.
we're still trying to come up with a good acronym file format, but the current file that it's saved as is VFJ because it's saved as a JSON, and VF is basically a verse 3 file.
Mm, got it.
Um, and this is all, so it's again, it's all based off WPF and C sharp here, but WPF is only used for the UI part. Um, and it's based on MVVM architecture, so it can be easily, this editor interface can easily be made for the web as well, so that you can open the same files in a web editor and use it through browser anywhere. Uh, So yeah, we're trying to focus a little more on the foundational sort of stuff right now, and this is just an MVP to see how it works and test it on see how users play with it, how it enables people to program simple things. Um, and yeah, this is basically just a rough uh, approximation of what we have in mind.
No, like this is looking great, and I have very like I could foresee like once people start experimenting, there could be like nuance use cases you're not even considering now, which could emerge. So
Exactly. Yeah, we're actually hoping that this could help a lot with business automation as well, and that's why we even explored, the date time components and things like this, because this kind of is like a proof of concept for uh, basic personal programming. It kind of empowers users with their own hardware, being able to create software that they know how the software works, rather than us just pressing a button and hoping that it works the way that we expect it to, not knowing what it means for our privacy, our security, and 50 other things. This way, if we click on a button, we know exactly what it does because we've built it the way that we need it to work. And I think that is a very powerful thing that these kind of visual scripting environments almost unknowingly empower people with. Even Grasshopper and all the ones that are popular these days, they kind of help creative people program creatively, and kind of doesn't you don't need to worry about bugs as much. You don't need to worry about the components not working the way they do, because you know that they've been built to perform a very simple, very small function. Each of them will have maybe just a few lines of code, and they'll just take their inputs and give their outputs. And when you put them together, you actually perform a larger function, which is what you intend to do. So yeah, I think it has a lot of promise and quite a lot of power.
Yeah, I was wondering like if I went want to make like a web app, so like can I have like my business logic here and then Dockerize it and deploy it and the front end talks.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, theoretically, still, but yeah, we're hoping to build to that, where you can easily work with virtual machines and servers, especially. We're trying to make it so that it's built from the ground up to work on the cloud. I mean, I have experience working with Shipdiver, and I know they've had all cloud-based, Grasshopper providers have a lot of trouble scaling Grasshopper on the cloud. Shipdiver, of course, has a genius team, and so does Hyper, and so many more. So they've kind of worked around the limitations that Grasshopper presents. But I mean, we're trying to build it in a way that it's definitely going to be solid enough to work on the cloud headlessly, so to speak, without any human interaction. It should be able to execute more powerful scripts um, scalably, essentially working on multiple server systems, or even executing logic to distribute computation.
I see. And so like Grasshopper uses Rhino for the viewport to visualize. Here, like you showed, like we could use console log to debug. Are there any visual part attached to it, or you want this will be like a standalone?
Do you mean the error bubbles?
Like if right now you have, let's say, curves, where would one visualize the curves?
Yeah. So again, if interoperability were working, I could have shown that to you. But maybe I can try it with geometry. Um, but yeah, we have all these components, and maybe try with something simpler. Okay, point, and we can just say construct point. Yeah, this is not working well.
Okay.
But yeah, essentially, this would simply create a point inside of verse 3, which would not be visualized here itself. You would have to send it to Rhino in order to visualize it. And that's just because it's not working inside of Rhino like Grasshopper is. It doesn't really have a direct connection to its display
Hmm.
just yet, to its viewport just yet. But we can easily modify the plugin that's working inside of Rhino to do that. So that way, we don't even have to add this component. As soon as a point is generated, we can just send it over to Rhino and display it there, just the way Grasshopper does. So that's, I mean, as we work on interoperability with different tools, we'll have to kind of refine them slowly to a point where we don't actually have to let the users say, receive a message from this application. We can just enable interoperability with that application with a tick, and it should work seamlessly.
I see. So you have adopted the approach where like one would have all the logic in this visual editor, but like the visualization and like geometric kernel will be used in various like
Exactly.
endpoints one wants to use. Okay.
Exactly. So Rhino already has a very robust API that they allow for public use. So we've used that, and the same applies to Unity. Unity also has a very simple API to work with. And they're all .NET enabled. So especially because of that, we're able to work with all these applications and make them talk to each other very easily.
So, are you like also translating your data structure of point to Rhino compatible, Unity compatible point data structure?
Um, so I've worked with Rhino and Unity compatibility in the past, and in that case, I simply created a third sort of uh, intermediate format for both to understand and work with. And I think that's what we'll end up doing with this case as well. We'll kind of create a default mesh format and a
Mm,
default data format in which we'll store 3D information in a kind of generic sense, so that it's able to, so that we can convert it and work with it in different applications. And it'll probably be as extensible as possible, so that in cases where there's additional data or there's a more complicated data structure that we need to work with in any other application, we can easily extend it.
I see. Because I was thinking, okay, in Web 3.js has a different way of defining a point, and
Correct.
if you have a subscriber over there, it's sending that data packet, but then there is also like a converter or a translator of that data
Right.
structure into that engine compatible format.
Yeah. We also have Speckle,
Oh,
who've graciously done a lot of the work for us. So we're considering, actually integrating with Speckle. They also have a brilliant API which we can use. We haven't yet started working on that, but it's in the works.
yeah. And what if, like, for example, in a complex geometry, I know in 3JS, like every tick or animation frame, it checks whether like the mesh vertices are modified and re-renders the canvas. So if you're sending this data stream of multiple points and only one point change, will Rhino check all the points you send, or just will listen to that coordinate change in one point?
Uh, you're talking about the bounce again, basically.
Okay, demand. Yeah.
Yeah. But right now that doesn't really work that way. Right now every single message is passed by Rhino. That's not really an issue also, because as long as the data isn't massive, uh, it's pretty efficient, because it's not even entering a network. It's just talking through. It's basically using the RAM. So it just stores memory to the RAM. One application stores memory to the RAM, which is available to another application to fetch it from there, and that's how it works.
Got it. And for example, I have mesh for material where uh, one needs to define texture. Do you like do base 64 encoding and pass it through the stream, or how do you envision that data to be shared?
So the reason why everything's broken again is data structures, right? And the way the data structures in Versary work are a little different from how we're used to them working in Grasshopper or anything else. We've tried to made it very flexible, to the point where a data structure can contain another data structure. Um, and so I know that's a little tricky to wrap your head around, but uh, that kind of expands our understanding of how data trees also work, and it enables what we like to call objects, uh, object creation, object definition, where the same data structure can have diverse uh, types of data inside of one structure, and itself it, it can still be an object, and then can be multiplied, so using that kind of data structure, it enables us to work with a variety of other, convert to and from a variety of other types, including very custom object definitions, including definitions of objects where you have materials and meshes and 50 other things. like you do in Unity or 3JS. So that's the reason why everything's broken as well right now. The older plugins that we had developed earlier on are kind of based off that data structure definition, and they're still yet to be updated to work with the new one.
Cool. This is exciting. What are your next plans and roadmap?
Well, I'm going to be presenting a paper on this topic at Cadria, which is happening in India this time, around in March. That's the one clear roadmap that we have. Apart from that, we're still working on developing this a little more, trying to uh, also get people on board for helping us develop it, uh, and slowly kind of expanding um, on what we set out to build.
And like business model for this initiative?
We're trying to focus on again scalability for the business model. We're hoping that if we're able to make a system that a tool that anyone can use literally, and is also robust enough to be scalable, that it'll enable a lot of businesses to rely on this system to to configure the way their backend works, the way their the digital part of their business works, from basic business personal automation, schedule automation, routine automation, even to complex back-end server automations, all sorts of things. So even like reminding you to work out when you're not uh, coding or something, just showing a pop-up on your phone, or giving you certain notifications as kind of an assistant that you've programmed to work a certain way, to all the way to you know, delivering a certain automated, computationally designed product to your customer, and giving you updates about it as well.
I see. Like, I meant on the sense, will it be open source, freemium, or like you will
Right.
be hosting services? Like,
I mean, it's already open source. The current version of this is already open source. And we intended to keep it that way because, especially learning, I've been part of the Grasshopper community for so long, and I know that especially the people who developed Grasshopper plugins in the past will very easily be able to develop plugins for this. I want to encourage that, and I want to make sure that anyone who has any basic development knowledge can easily pick it up and start working with it. And that's why I think making it open source is the best, so that we have feedback also from them. Of course, right now I'm afraid to even ask for feedback, but eventually we'll need a lot of that, and we'll need a lot of contribution as well to make it a powerful platform. Uh, that because that's what makes a platform powerful. It's users themselves, and then their feedback, and their and developers as well. So with that in mind, I want to make sure that the actual tool is open source, uh, but limited for kind of non-commercial use, so to speak, so that we can monetize the scalability aspect of it, and support the development of the backend and of the software behind it.
yeah, I think Unreal has similar license where if you're making up to a particular amount of money, then you need to pay. Like, yes,
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
cool. Uh, I know, like, in this last section, I wanted to cover like general part, how we can learn from, like, if I'm not wrong, you learned all the software development by yourself, and developing this is a great feat. So what are some resources you recommend for anyone who wants to move from computational designer or technologist to a software developer? So yeah.
Um, Yeah, and I mean, for me, the number one resource has always been YouTube to learn. Uh, and not just because of, I mean, regularly updating content, but because people actually have put out a lot of very easy to follow tutorials there. Uh, and I mean, I'm sure a lot of people do that already. Uh, but apart from that, I think it's mostly just to do things and just jump straight into them and tackle one problem at a time till you're able to solve enough problems to achieve your goal. That way, you're able to do your own kind of smaller projects that are creative and are actually new, rather than just following a tutorial to reach an output that 50 other people would have reached.
Mhm. And from your like freelancing to starting a technology company, like, any tips for people who are considering this path and how to find clients or
Um, yeah, experience, and uh, that's pretty much it. You have to keep building. You have to keep trying to do things and showing those things, sharing those things, uh, and yeah, just persistence also, I guess. uh, yeah.
I see. If you had unlimited time and resources, what would you do?
Um, yeah, I'd build a lot more tools for people to do cool stuff with. That's
I see.
uh,
Uh, if you have a dream team of six AC technologists to build a software, who would be that in that team?
I mean, you would definitely make the list. That's one of the reasons why we got in touch way back when. Uh, but yeah, there are quite a few. There's Andrew Human, who I look up to a lot. Um, there's of course the great David Rutten, and yeah, there's even Amog, who's a dear friend of mine, and he's also helped me develop a little bit of this application in the past. Um, but yeah, there's, I mean, it's a growing industry, and I see so many people coming up every now and then. It's inspiring to see that.
Yeah. Is there anything you think we should do it in India to encourage this budding software developers come technologists?
At this point, I think the only thing required in India is awareness. If people are aware of what an architect's job is, what an architect's or technologist's job is, they'll slowly start to see the value in it. And yeah, I think that starts at sharing things and talking about things. And that's what we're doing. So yeah, hopefully things will improve.
Awesome, awesome. Uh, like very open-ended question. What are your thoughts on AI, blockchain in architecture or AC?
I think it's very young still. Uh, it's been young since a long time now, and it's still there. Uh, it'll take a while for people to actually start applying it in the real world, because the applications of it aren't uh, yet, accessible to everyone. To put it plainly, um, they're there. I mean, you can do a lot of things with AI already that you couldn't do even just a few days ago. I'm sure every other day you'll find something new. But to get to the point where it's no longer a long AI winter, it'll take a while for us to reach a point where architects are using AI as a tool in their daily work and in their workflows. It's another software on their PCs or whatever.
I see. I have like a rapid fire to wrap up the interview. We'll have like
So,
5 to 10 seconds, and you gotta answer it very brief.
okay.
Which cities are in your travel bucket list?
Um, that's a very tough question. I'm sorry. Um, which cities you said, right?
Hmm.
Yeah, that's what makes it tough. um, yeah, anywhere in Russia, really. Not, I mean, mostly because it's supposed to be beautiful there, but somewhere up north.
I see. Is there any book which made a big impact in your life?
Um, yeah, a few. Um, there's Creativity Inc. Uh, by Catmull, and there's also Steve Jobs. I think those two had a big enough impact. Yeah.
Yeah. Which is one architectural or urban experience which is dearest to you? Place.
Experience.
Yeah, like a place which left a big memory mark.
Well, since you said experience, and this came to my mind, I'm going to say it. In Singapore, there's the Science Museum. I think it's called Art and Science Museum. They had an exhibition by Team Lab when I visited Singapore, and that experience has stuck with me for forever. It was a really magical technological experience. Yeah, very inspiring.
I see. Who are your role models?
Keeps changing, honestly. Yeah, ever evolving. Every other day, I find someone to be inspired by. It's yeah, ever changing world.
Yeah. Uh, what are your hobbies?
Um, well, apart from AEC Tech, music, and I mean AEC Tech really is a hobby. I don't want to sound obnoxious because I haven't really. It's not. I haven't been qualified to do this. I've picked it up on my own as a hobby. And uh, developed it into a career. But apart from that, yeah, music. I play a lot of instruments, um, guitar, keyboard.
Nice. Is there anything which we didn't cover in this interview and you like to end on that note?
No, I think we've covered pretty much everything I was hoping to learn more. Uh, but yeah, I hope more people try using, especially developers, try using Verse 3 and help us build it. It would be great if someone's interested in contributing, you can reach out to me, and I can onboard you, help you out on how to get started. Uh, and yeah, that's about it.
Yeah, what's the best way to reach out to add or like add code or like share feedback about the work?
If you're interested in contributing, you can just go to GitHub and pull and check out the code and get started. It's fairly straightforward, especially if you've built Grasshopper plugins in the past. Uh, if you need to reach out to me, I'm available on LinkedIn most of the time. Uh, or I mean, you can find our email on our website at iterate.de. Um, and yeah, it's,
Awesome. Indeed a pleasure hosting you. Like
yeah, my
love the
pleasure being
work
here.
you have developed. So
So
kudos to you.
thanks.
Have a great rest of your day.
Thanks.